The deep web is one of the most amazing things on earth. Not because of how joyful it can make people or anything like that, but because it's a completely uncensored view of people. You can speak your mind, you can buy what you want, you can do anything you want when on the deep web. You can have complete and total freedom. Now, I've always been fascinated by the deep web, and at the time the events in the story occurred, I was in college. Lots of people at my campus had really been getting into accessing the deep web. It was almost like a trend. With so many people getting on it, it seemed perfectly safe for me to give it a try. Now, I've always heard of the deep web horror stories. Stories of hacking, stumbling on disgusting sites. These stories were mainly what kept me off the deep web, but with most of the people at my college using it on a normal basis, I decided to give it a go. I asked a friend to come over and help me set it up. When my friend arrived, we opened up my laptop and began to set everything up. He told me that we were going to be using Tor, a program that lets you access the deep web. He also asked me if I was planning on doing anything illegal, to which I replied no. He said that since I wasn't, we didn't need to install something called Tails, which is apparently some kind of software that makes it more secure if you plan on doing illegal things. A little while later, everything was set up. I had my new IP address, and my friend gave me a brief rundown of what to do and what not to do. He made it very clear that when I was using the hidden wiki, that I kept it on censored mode, so that it would be less likely for me to see something I didn't want to see. After about 2 weeks of using the deep web, I felt like a pro. I'd accessed so many different sites, spoken with some great people, made friends, even bought some weed. I'd become a little bit cocky and was ready to dig deeper into the dark web. I turned off the censored mode on the hidden wiki and began to browse the links. It took a while, mostly because Tor is a bit slow, and many of the links just lead to dead web pages. Eventually though, I stumbled onto a site called All the Gore. It was mainly a big chat room, with many different topics. I had a fairly strong stomach. I'd seen many violent movies, I've seen things like beheadings, killings, After looking at a few different chat rooms, I noticed how sick this site really was. The people in these chat rooms were actual killers, bragging about some of the things they had done. You could also post pictures, and one man by the name of Culture045, he was explaining in detail how he'd broken into someone's house, kidnapped a little girl, and brutally killed her parents by hiding there under the bed, and then opening their throats. He then explained how he brought the little girl back to his house and did unspeakable things to her, beat her, cut her up, and, well, just some other things you don't even want to know. I didn't think he was telling the truth at first, but then he posted pictures. These were the most horrifying pictures I had ever seen. Close-ups of a poor, 8 or 10-year-old girl being brutally beaten and cut with a knife. Culture kept posting these pictures. The new ones were of the girl tied to a chair, bleeding, crying, throwing up. Then he showed a picture of him with a drill, and he was drilling it into her skull. The most haunting part is that while he was doing it, he was looking at the camera with sheer joy on his face. Now, I'd seen enough, and I typed in the chat room,
"You people are sick. You deserve to die. How can you sleep at night?"
Immediately, people began making fun of me, saying that I was just as helpless and ignorant as the little girl in the pictures, and I should get off the big boy part of the internet. They began saying I was a pussy, and then Culture045 started to type something in the chat room. He said,
Really? Where do you live, buddy? I'm sure everybody would love to see you on this site.
I then made the biggest mistake of my life, and I typed,
I'm calling the police and having this site shut down.
Less than a minute later, everything on the site went black, and a new chat box appeared in green. In it, someone named Admin1 typed in the box. He said,
Call the cops, and you will regret it.
I didn't type anything in the box, and reached out for my cell phone. What happened next still haunts me to this day. My phone said I had one new message. I opened it, and it said, Call the police, and you are dead. There was no number. It didn't even say unknown number. It was just blank. I looked back at my laptop and saw my webcam light turn on. I quickly covered it, but I saw on the screen a picture of me looking at my phone. I got wide-eyed and froze for a moment, when the admin typed again.
Put the phone down, right now, and uncover your webcam.
I put my phone down, but kept the webcam covered, when he typed again.
Okay then. Be like that.
Right after, he posted my full name, age, and address in the chat box and typed,
It would be a shame if you and your college buddies went missing, wouldn't it?
I then did as he said and uncovered my webcam. He then told me to follow his instructions on how to make it impossible for me to reach the site again. I followed each and every one. When I finished, I got a text that said, Now don't even try and come back. Just like before, it had no number. I still called the police from my friend's phone, but they were never able to find the site. If you ever go into the deep web, don't just mindlessly explore, especially if you don't have additional software to keep you more secure. I was a stupid college kid, and I just hope nobody makes the same mistakes I did.
I'm a single father that just got over a breakup with my fiance. After losing a lawsuit by her, somehow she got ownership of my house we bought together and kicked me out, along with my 10-month-old son named Jason. After doing some searching, I managed to find a very cheap hotel to live in for a few weeks, until I got back on my feet after losing a large amount of cash to that damn gold digger. But anyways, this hotel was quite the rundown place. Water damage on the walls and ceiling, the wallpaper peeling off the walls, revealing a very uncomforting, grimy substance that made me itch, but I had to make do. Within the first few days of me living there, Jason started to act a little strange. Like he wasn't eating all his food, and he was just not his happy and joyful self. So I took him to a pediatrician, and they said he was fine. There were no changes in weight, and he wasn't sick. So the pediatrician just gave me some vitamins to give him. On the way back home, I looked in the rearview mirror, only to see Jason staring straight into my eyes. It almost seemed like he wasn't even there, like he was just some doll. I made it home, or to that trash hotel, and sat Jason down on the floor to see if I could get him to start crawling. As soon as I put him down on the floor, he turned in the opposite direction, and with his back facing toward me, I called his name in a playful manner. "Come here, Jason, come on." Then he began to crawl away. "No, come on, Jason, this way." Then, out of nowhere, a loud, demonic "No" came from his direction. I stared at his back, and I tried to convince myself I did not just hear that. I looked at Jason again and said, "Jason, come here." This time, in a less playful manner. Then, just as those words left my mouth, another
"No!"
came from his direction. Then, I walked up to him and picked him up, his back still facing me, and turned him around, only to reveal a face that did not belong to my son. Its whole face was covered in blood, eyes protruding from its head. Then I heard the most horrifying laugh I have ever heard in my life. I freaked out and threw whatever the hell it was against the wall and took off into my bedroom, where I locked the door, and then I realized a small lump under the blankets in Jason's crib. I lifted them up, only to reveal my son, just as I heard a heavy thud against the door.
It has always been my nightmare, you know? Finding a hair between your gums or coming out of your throat. You would start to pull on it, only for the hair to keep coming out in an endless, undisturbed strand. In the dreams where it was coming out of my throat, I would eventually start to gag, bile rising into my mouth, but I knew I had to keep pulling and get the damn thing out. Maybe it's a subconscious response to learning about Rapunzel syndrome. I'm sure you've heard of it. Someone with long hair would compulsively chew on their own hair until a ball of it would form in their stomach. A bezor, I believe it's called. Dream meeting sites would always tell me that dreams about pulling hair from your mouth meant you were suppressing something you couldn't tell anyone. That was bullshit. I wasn't suppressing anything. Every time I had one of those dreams, in the morning I would suspiciously check my mouth to make sure there were no hairs tickling the back of my throat or curling out of my gums. Every morning I was satisfied to find nothing, the dream becoming nothing more than my subconscious playing tricks on me again. However, one morning was different, and this is the morning I will tell you about. After another one of those nightmares, I woke up tired. I shuffled into the bathroom to start my morning routine, and when I was ready to brush my teeth, I began the inspection of my mouth. Doing it more out of habit than actually expecting to find anything, I had to do a double take when I noticed a short wisp of whitish hair sticking out from gum around one of my molars. I leaned into the mirror and angled my hair for a better look, trying to get more light to hit the back of my mouth. There was no denying it. Hair was sticking out of my gum. I ran my tongue over it and felt the strand, soft and slick. I tried not to panic and just stood in front of the mirror, my breath fogging up the reflective surface as I struggled to come to a rational conclusion. I had blonde hair, not as fair as the hair coming out of the gum, but maybe the color had lightened in my mouth. It had to come from my head, right? Perhaps I had been chewing on my hair in my sleep. Maybe I did have Rapunzel syndrome. Maybe my dreams were trying to warn me. Nevertheless, there was no way I had hair growing out of my mouth. It must have just wrapped itself around my tooth and gotten lodged between the tooth and gum. I just had to pull it out, and everything would be fine. Rummaging in my bathroom drawers, I found a pair of tweezers. The bit of hair sticking out was so short I couldn't pull it with my nails. I tilted my head to an awkward angle to see the tooth better and tried to get a hold of the hair. The tweezers were blocking my view, and I was growing exceedingly frustrated from how difficult it was going to be to get a hold of the hair. I could feel my arm growing tired and a slow burn beginning to build up at the back of my neck, which always happens when I overexert myself. I was just about ready to give up when I managed to catch the hair with the tweezers. I could feel a soft tug at my gums. I let out the breath I hadn't realized I had been holding the entire time and carefully began to pull the hair out. I could feel it sliding between the gum and the tooth, and the sensation was strange and unpleasant. The hair seemed to be longer than I had anticipated, and eventually I met with resistance. I muttered a curse and figured that it must have literally wrapped itself around the tooth, so I tugged at the strand, carefully at first and then with increasing pressure when the hair wouldn't budge. Eventually it moved and pain blossomed around the tooth. I kept pulling at the hair and could feel warm blood trickling out of the gum into my throat. Eventually, I had pulled the hair out enough for it to reach the outside of my mouth, but it still kept coming. I had long hair, so I wasn't worried, but the pain caused by the strand sliding out was gradually increasing. It must have been cutting into the gums for it to hurt and bleed so much, I reasoned. The hair was the length of my arm when I began to get worried. The white color of it was strange, as if it had never seen sunlight before. It sort of reminded me of the almost translucent wispy hairs growing on my legs and arms, which began to make me paranoid. Was this hair actually growing out of my gum? But if it was, why was it so long? Had it been growing in there for a long time? I remembered reading about ingested twins online and about hair and teeth in strange places that could grow due to the other twin cells activating in those areas. Was that what was happening here? I was beginning to panic again, and my face had started to go numb from holding my mouth open so long. So I yanked at the hair hard, hoping it would finally dislodge itself. The pain was indescribable. I could feel more of the strand sliding out, but I felt like my whole head was suddenly on fire. I sobbed and dropped the tweezers to the floor, the hair dangling out of my mouth grotesquely. I grabbed a hold of the hair with my fingers and yanked again, the pain increasing to an almost unbearable level, causing me to follow the tweezers to the floor as my knees gave out. My head was swimming with the pain and my face felt entirely numb, but I knew I had to get that hair out of my mouth. I just had to. With a final yank, I pulled on the strand of hair and felt it finally dislodge from the gum before promptly passing out. Medical notes for Jenny Anderson. Social Security number 27022016. Aurora's Hospital, Helsinki. Patient was originally brought to the ER by ambulance from the patient's home after her husband had found her unresponsive on the bathroom floor. The patient remained unresponsive when paramedics tried to wake her up, and her mouth was bleeding profusely. A long strand of what appeared to be white hair was clutched in the patient's fingers. In the hospital, the patient underwent several checks, and it was found that her face was entirely paralyzed. The patient was recommended for an MRI. The scan revealed serious damage to the patient's tissues around the facial area. The doctors inspected the patient's mouth around the area of bleeding and found a strand of nervous tissue poking out from the gums. The hospital inquired after the white strand of hair found in the patient's hand, and the husband informed that he had tossed it in the trash. However, he had not taken the trash out yet, so a member of the medical staff was sent to retrieve a sample. In analysis, it was revealed that what was thought to be hair was nervous tissue, apparently pulled out by the patient with a pair of tweezers. Once the patient finally awoke, she explained to the doctors that she had just been trying to get the hair out of her mouth. On the recommendation of the doctor handling her care, she was transferred to the Aurora Hospital psychiatric ward. Patient remains firm in her belief that what she pulled out of her mouth was hair. The patient has quoted that they suffer from Rapunzel syndrome. Aquilinino, MD.
One summer, a girl moved into the house next door. Her name was Rose. She lived with her mother and they were quite poor. Her father had abandoned them years before. She was new in town and found it hard to adjust. Although we both came from different backgrounds, she and I got to be friends. We were not very close friends, but I often visited her house and we would talk. The moment I laid eyes on her, I knew she was the perfect girl for me. Unfortunately, She didn't feel the same way. She was attracted to boys who were handsome and confident. It was clear that I wasn't her type, so I decided to wait. She didn't have any friends of her own to talk to, so she confided in me. Mostly, she would complain about her life, telling me how her mother hit her, how the girls in her class were mean and excluded her. She also told me about a boy she had a crush on. He was very popular with the girls in school. As she talked about her problems, I just sat there and listened. One day, Rose stopped coming to school. As it turned out, it was because she was being bullied. She told me that one of the popular girls in school had found out she had a crush on her boyfriend. The popular girl and her friends would bully her every time they saw her. She said they even spread vile rumours about her to the other classmates, and they were making her life a living nightmare. I just kept quiet and listened as she vented her problems. Her behaviour began to change after she entered junior high school. She stayed out until all hours of the night and began to smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. I heard rumours that she was doing drugs too. She fell in with a bad crowd and was even arrested by the police once. Her home life grew even worse, and she would frequently quarrel with her mother in the middle of the night. All of the girls in school hated her. Someone spread graffiti all over her house, calling her horrible names and saying disgusting things about her. Someone even killed her pet cat and stuffed it through her letterbox. Eventually, Rose dropped out of high school. She became withdrawn and locked herself in her bedroom. She stopped speaking to her mother and went for days without leaving her room. She rarely came out to eat. She looked pale, sickly, and painfully thin. Her mother took to leaving food outside her door. She would only come out when she needed to use the toilet or in the middle of the night when her mother was asleep. It was a miserable life. I went to see her for the first time in a long time. She refused to come out to see me, and even though I yelled through the keyhole, she refused to answer. Her mother gave me a bowl of soup to take upstairs to her. I caught a glimpse of her when she opened the door to take it. She was pale, drawn, haggard and emaciated. She looked like a wet rag that had been wrung out. I went to see her every day. After a while, Rose began talking to me through the door. She told me how she was constantly fighting with her mother, and all her old friends had forgotten about her. She told me how she had fallen in with a bad crowd and went out with them at night, stealing, doing drugs, and getting into trouble. She told me she was caught stealing by the police and she had a criminal record. She told me how her mother tried to help her at first, but when she wouldn't listen, her mother flew into a rage and beat her. Her life had become unbearable. She wanted to die, and she told me she had tried to commit suicide many times by slitting her wrist. Just like the old days, she continued to talk on, and I just listened. Whenever she asked for my opinion, I just shrugged or made some incoherent remark. As time went by, Rose's mood gradually began to brighten. She even decided to come out of her room. It seemed like things were getting better, and the future was looking positive. Her mother broke down in tears and thanked me profusely. One day, Rose went up to the roof of an apartment building in the neighbourhood and jumped off. The building wasn't very high, and she landed in the shrubbery. That was probably what saved her life. However, her spinal cord was injured in the fall, and she was paralysed from the neck down. The doctor said she would spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. When she got out of hospital, I went to see her. She was lying on her bed, unable to move. She apologised to me over and over, and she couldn't stop crying. She said she wished she didn't survive the fall, and told me she was sorry for all the trouble she had caused me and her mother. I tried to soothe her and stop her crying, but it's hard to comfort someone when they are lying down. I embraced her awkwardly. She was weeping so much that her whole body was shaking. She couldn't even wipe away her own tears. As I held her in her arms, I asked her to marry me. She was like, "Really? Are you serious?" Me. Really? She couldn't believe that anyone would want her. I had to propose to her several times before she would believe I really meant it. She cried so hard, her tears ran dry. I tried to reassure her and told her I wanted to marry her because I had always loved her. She was the perfect girl for me. She always had been. Even when she ignored me and didn't return my feelings. Even when she was hanging out with a bad crowd. Even when I had to listen to all her stupid problems. Even when she became so thin and was hiding in her room. Even when I told the popular girl she fancied her boyfriend. Even when I was spreading vile rumours about her to her classmates. Even when I spread graffiti all over her house. Even when I killed her cat and put it through the letterbox of her house. Even now that she is lying there in her bed, small, weak, and unable to move. Even now, I still love her. You see, she is the perfect girl for me. Soon, we will be married. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to say a massive thank you to NathanDuce TV, Jack's Nightmares and Blackeyed Blonde.
If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or have any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.